Hello, Capital Press family. My name is Christy Danner, and I'm the Assistant Director of Worship for our church, and I help out at Fairfax and McLean. And I'm excited today to be bringing our Advent devotional. As we've been doing the past few days, our call to worship is Psalm 33, so let me read some of those verses. Shout for joy in the Lord, O you righteous. Praise befits the upright. Give thanks to the Lord with the lyre. Make melody to him with the harp of 10 strings. Sing to him a new song. Play skillfully on the strings with loud shouts. Our soul waits for the Lord. He is our help and our shield. For our heart is glad in him because we trust his holy name. Let your steadfast love, O Lord, be upon us, even as we hope in you. And our passage today is Isaiah 42, verses 1 through 9. I'll just be reading a few verses. And to set the context, what we see in this passage is a God who keeps his promises of deliverance and freedom to a weak and powerless people, deliverance through his servant, who is Jesus Christ. And we see that God's promise to Israel is also a promise for us. So let me read a few of those verses for you. Behold my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen, in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations. He will not cry aloud or lift up his voice or make it heard in the street. A bruised reed he will not break, and a faintly burning wick he will not quench. He will faithfully bring forth justice. He will not grow faint or be discouraged till he has established justice in the earth. And the coastlands wait for his law. And skipping down to verse 6, I am the Lord. I have called you in righteousness. I will take you by the hand and keep you. I will give you as a covenant for the people, a light for the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison, those who sit in darkness. So where is Israel in this passage? God's people are in captivity, dealing with the consequences of their rebellion against God. Their homes have been destroyed, their enemies seem to be prevailing, and all hope seems to be fading. And then we get this beautiful promise from God, a promise of a redeemer, a servant, the one who will accomplish the justice and freedom Israel is powerless to accomplish on their own. And who is a servant? Well, we know it's Jesus, but how do we know that? In Matthew chapter 12, verses 15 through 21, these exact verses are quoted referring specifically to Jesus, indicating he is the servant God spoke of. He is the fulfillment of God's promise of a redeemer. And who is this redeemer? Who is Jesus? God calls Jesus my chosen, in whom my soul delights. Jesus pleases God and is an object of his love and favor. And what's beautiful about that is that we in Christ are now seen the same way by God. God sees us as his chosen, in whom his soul delights. Jesus, our Redeemer, is also filled with the Spirit, equipped to bring forth justice for the nations, all the nations, not just Israel, but across all of the earth. So that's our Redeemer, but who are we in this passage? We are a bruised reed. What does that mean? We are a people in need. We are hurting. We are a faintly burning wick, a people whose hope and faith are slowly fading. And how timely is this passage in a season where we see pain and suffering everywhere? Our hope can easily be fading. But remember, though, this passage teaches us that God doesn't leave us in that place. In the garden, we chose to rebel against God. God could have left us in our sin. Israel has rebelled against God. God could have left Israel, and he would have been justified to do so. But instead, we see God moving towards his people. He promises deliverance and freedom. It says, he will not break his people. He will not put out their flame of hope. He will faithfully bring forth justice. He isn't impatient or frustrated with us, even though by all rights he should be. He doesn't bring forth justice on us as we deserve. Instead, he executes justice upon himself on our behalf. At the cross, he's already freed us from our ultimate enemies, sin and death. And even now, he is working to make all things new. And Jesus will accomplish all that he has promised. He will not faint or be discouraged until he has established justice in the earth. And what does this justice look like? It's to open the eyes that are blind. It is to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison, those who sit in darkness. Through this servant, through Jesus, God will take us by the hand and keep us. Through Jesus, he is making his people a light to the nations. And through Jesus, our eyes have been opened, and we have been freed from sin and death and darkness. So this passage teaches us that God is a God who keeps his promises. He did not leave Israel in their distress, and he will not leave us. The promise he made to Israel is a promise for us. So in this Advent season, as we long for justice, for freedom, for healing, we can wait in hope and trust in the God who keeps his promises.